Howdy folks, and welcome to another Taste of Gameplay video, this time for the Commonwealth Tech Tree Tier 1 cruiser, the Sutlej. I always, in my head, say the name of this Subtle J, and so I had to look it up and make sure. I was like, don't say Subtle J, it's not the Subtle J, it's the Sutlej, apparently. It's a river in Asia, I guess. The most interesting thing about the Sutlej, it's basically a black swan. I think it's almost identical. So the most interesting thing about the Sutlej to me is the fact that it's by far the newest tier 1 in the game. And so like when I went to go calculate my PR after the game, I used this app, which actually I wrote, and someday I'll cover that in a video, but I use this app which downloads all of the ship data and then calculates your PR for you. And I'm going to have a reasonably good game in the Sutlej, but there's 3 players on both teams, which is awesome, but means that it deflates your stats. Also, the other 2 players on my team are in a div, and they clearly know what they're doing. So they're going to get a lot of damage in this game. Let me pause for a moment because one of the more interesting parts of the game is going to be right here at the beginning, because I'm actually fighting against a player and a player in an Eerie. So it's just interesting to see how the Sutlej compares against the Eerie. I would say it compared pretty well. I get a couple of opening shots in on him for free, but then we're basically just going to start trading gunfire. He's not positioned completely the way I would. He's not getting all his guns firing, so that's an issue for him. But it's just interesting to see how the Sutlej stacks up against the Eerie. I just played the Eerie not all that long ago. He's down about 1,000 hit points to start with, 1,000 life. He's only got 5,400, and I have 6,450. These 6 guns, I will say, feel pretty good. I don't think they're all that different than the Eerie's guns, but they feel better. Just having the 3 double turrets feels nice. Dispersion's not bad. The range is not great, but that's okay. You can't use the long range in tier 1 anyway. So yeah, I managed to sink him and take about, what is that, 3,000 damage in return. So yeah, I would say that's a pretty good encounter. Although it does leave me on lower health for the rest of the game, which means I have to play a little more conservatively, at least with respect to the other players on the enemy team. Anyway, but back to what I was saying before. So I went to calculate my PR after the game, and it was really low. It was actually only about 1470. I'm used to getting these ridiculous PR numbers at tier 1. I think my max is like 16,000 or something absurd like that. And I was like, huh, that's really interesting. So I looked at the data, and the thing about the Sutlej is the average kills per game recorded up at the database that we use for calculating PR is 4.3. So on average, since the Sutlej has come out and the people that are recording their games, the average number of kills per game, the average number is 4.3. If you were to look at like the Black Swan, I bet you'd probably find something along the lines of 0.5 or 0.7. And I find that super interesting because it's kind of a historical record, you know, like when they look at big old trees and they look at the wood rings, right, to see what happened in the past. What that basically tells me, I never played World of Warships in an environment where you could reliably get 9 to 12 players per team at tier 1, but I know that there was a time when that existed. And in that environment, especially because a lot of players at tier 1 might be brand new to the game, I can easily imagine that there are hundreds of thousands of games recorded with some of the early tier 1 ships like the Black Swan, where players just didn't get any kills at all or got 1 kill. But that essentially never happens anymore today, or at least it happens very rarely. The only time I think that would ever happen is with genuinely brand new players, and there's just not that many of those. So most of the data for a ship like the Sutlej is people like me and like the other people in the game with me right now playing, who know what they're doing and are playing against bots, and it's easy to rack up 5, 6, 7, 8, even 9 kills. I think I have a game where I killed all 12 ships on the enemy team. So it makes sense that the average would be 4.3, especially for a ship like the Sutlej, because if you are truly a new player, you're going to play the Erie or one of the other like starting ships. You're not going to buy the Commonwealth Sutlej Tier 1 cruiser and play it when you're actually brand new to the game. I mean, I'm sure it happens once in a blue moon, but on average, I'm sure the majority of games played in this are people with thousands of games played already. So there you go. The average is 4.3 kills and 26,000 damage. Now, interestingly, the win rate of the Sutlej is only 46.6. That I can't quite explain. I don't think I know what's going on there. That doesn't immediately make a ton of sense to me. If the average is 4.3 kills, 4.3 kills feels like it should definitely help you win the game. But it might just be a small sample size. I don't know how many games are actually played in the Sutlej, but it's probably not that many. So yeah, the other interesting thing about the ship being so old, I'm going to start editing out chunks of this because it's going to get pretty dull here. The other thing about that is when you go to look at the wiki, at least the summaries were done by a volunteer. And at some point she had essentially a falling out with World of Warships and she stopped doing it. So you can always tell a new ship because it will have data up on the wiki, but it won't have the section where it's like player summary, and the Sutlej does not. But I can tell you it basically looks and feels like the Black Swan. Again, the guns are satisfying. I don't think they're actually any better. I think it's a little bit of an illusion, but they feel nice. 3 double turrets feels pretty good. Ship's kind of big, a little clumsy. I still prefer the Hermelin and the Chengen, but I could see this being like 3rd place. I do think that firing those 3 double turrets is just satisfying, and since that's a huge part of what you're going to do in this ship, you might as well have fun doing it, right? This is not a particularly amazing game from the standpoint of like me doing damage or getting kills. I think I end up with like 23,000 damage and 3 kills, but that's fine. It's mostly because, like I said, these 2 guys in a div on my team knew what they were doing and sucked up all the damage and the fun, but that's okay. That's totally fine. I knew as soon as I spawned it in this game with the 2 of them that, we were going to win and I wasn't going to get my usual absurd stats. I was just going to get normal stats. Anyway, the Sutlej is fine. If you're, just looking to do something different, you want to play a ship that nobody ever plays, you could try it out. I mean, tier 1 ships are free, so, go for it. I'll say again, I say all the time, this is a good time to play low tiers because it seems like there's a better population than usual. I don't know why that is, but I didn't have to wait very long for this game at all. It was like 30 seconds, which is great. Sometimes you wait 8-9 minutes. And yeah, I think that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.